It was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Don't be like a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
I'm Dominic Brown. I'm an activist and I coordinate the Economic Justice Program at the Alternative Information and Development Center.
I'm Mzana, Communications Intern at My Vote Counts, and I'm 26 years.
Hi, I am Riska. I am the Tax Justice Coordinator at Economic Justice Network in Cape Town.
I'm Tafadzwa. I'm the National Coordinator at Publish What You Pay South Africa here in Cape Town.
My name is Zukiswa. I am an activist at #Unite Behind in Cape Town.
One thing that I was really thinking about is the network that corruption is actually created. And Dominic, you'd help me with the stats here. But with illicit financial flows, we know that there are sort of three major sources. That's the state, and then that's including government officials. And then we have crime. It's also a part of the funds that, are leaking from our economy. And then there's the private sector. Yeah, so it's not just, when you look at it, it's not just the government officials or state enterprises. It's a big network.
In the work that we do at Unite Behind, we started looking at the different tenders that PRASA has. Firstly, because we knew that from 2017, they didn't have a structure. So what we're pushing for is that they need to have a proper structure, a board that can make decisions, because they didn't have that. So if the problem starts there, them not having a structure, then it's bound to collapse. So they didn't have a structure, which is one of the reasons why we took them to court on a number of cases. We'll probably speak about them later on. And then speaking about the corrupt tenders, we've got tenders such as Siangena, such as Siaya, Swifambo. Recently, I think in 2017, we had trains which were too big for our tracks, which couldn't fit, right? No one really took any, especially in the work that we do in our communities, no one knew what the reasons were for that. And then when we started to speak to commuters and different people, trying to make them understand that there was a contract between PRASA and a private company. So this is the reason why, because people that were responsible to make sure that the process goes or we get enough trains, they took the money for themselves. So now we're talking about corruption, but at the same time we're talking about state capture, because the money that they took for themselves is to benefit like a few, right? It's to benefit like a number of people, and then it's a corrupt network, syndicate, and it's not something that just happened over time. It happens over the years. And when we're talking about corruption and state capture, we're not only referring to Zuma to say it happened way before him.
Yes. And when you talk about the example that you just given about trains that were too big for the tracks, there's a certain company involved, and there's a certain state agency involved, and a certain government official involved. And then some criminal activities also going on. So it's a whole complicated network that continues to grow. And I have a feeling that as civil society, we're sort of lagging behind the new technologies that are coming that these networks are using to grow.
When people speak about corruption, it's just public sector corruption. It's government officials that's corrupt. It's your mayor, your president, like Zuma, etc. But it ignores the whole fact about private sector corruption. So I think when we look at the Zondo Commission, when we look at the Public Investment Corporate, the PIC investigation, we see that corruption is actually a private-public partnership, and that to ignore the role that the private sector plays is actually not to speak about corruption in its entirety. It's just one component of it, which I think is a mistake.
When you're speaking to commuters or speaking to the public about corruption, as you mentioned, Dominic, that it sounds like, or it seems like it's something that's there, that we can't really combat. It's always been there. It's something that we've decided to just normalize. It's common. We can't do anything. They're always going to be corrupt. They're always going to steal. But that's not the case if you're actually looking at the impact that the corruption it has on state-owned entities. Because the reason I'm mentioning this is you have trains that are not working. You have people that are being pushed outside of trains, riding on top of them, doors do not close properly, there's no proper signaling, all the problems that PRASA has. And it all goes back to one thing. When PRASA speaks to the commuters, PRASA says, the reason why we've got all these problems because the commuters are banning the trains, right? But now, that language on its own is a problem because people start pointing fingers to each other, but now not looking at the broad or the root of corruption which happens within state-owned entities.
When I was a student, we were funded by NSFAS, but you will find out that the NSFAS money, when it comes to the school, you don't know where it goes because some of the students were funded by NSFAS. And we'll find out that one of those who are funded, you will receive a letter from the school that you are not being funded or your details are not correct and so forth and that. But when you graduated, the school will give you the letter of a bill that you owe so much money from the school. And then when you go to NSFAS, the NSFAS will tell you that I've covered all your tuition fees and all the fees that you applied for. So the corruption is within our schools, within our management at schools. So that needs to be fixed because a lot of students now are not at school because they are not funded by NSFAS. In fact, they are funded, but the money revolves around the institution. Another thing, the government officials like service delivery at our clinics. You will find out that you go to the clinic and you are sick. When you get there to the clinic, you are being told that there are no medicine. And you'll get a letter that go to the pharmacy and have your medicines because at clinics there are no medicines. Of which you will find out that the nurses, they took those medicines, they open some pharmacy at their homes. So this corruption thing has impaired our lives a lot.
To me, the social impacts of these situations is actually the breakdown of a social contract between communities, between citizens and governments. When you look at corruption, these things become so aloof to you, and the terminology used is so aloof, and then also it's so frustrating. You just kind of give up at the end of the day. You're just like, my vote doesn't count, whatever I do doesn't matter. These political elites will keep doing it because these networks are so entrenched. You feel there's no way to maneuver around these situations. So I think at the end of the day, the breakdown between citizens and government, and also we're seeing now, SARS released reports saying that even though our tax-paying, ethos is still good in our country, it is decreasing. People are feeling, actually, you know what, why should I pay my taxes? To pay for what? I'm not getting service delivery, I'm not getting anything from my hard-earned taxes. And we have a pay-as-you-earn tax system, which means that all your money, as the harder you work, the more you're giving to the state. So that is a real impact.
And also I think when we look at corruption, we must look at it not as just a moral question. Yes, it's wrong, yes, it's bad. But I think ultimately we must locate it within a whole accumulation paradigm, an accumulation regime where you don't have, when you have a new political elite and you're wanting to build a new black elite in South Africa, for example, who don't have access to capital, then they have to use the state in connection with the private sector in order to get access to kickbacks, to tenders and all of these things. And I think this is how we must locate corruption in a South African context, not this phenomenon that is abstract or divorced from the actual economic structure of the South African economy.
The fact that most corrupt government officials are not being brought to book. Nothing happens to them. Okay, we'll read headlines, it will make noise for a few weeks, a few days, and after that, it's gone. So what will stop people within, like citizens, to also do this. They know that you can get away with it. And I'm sure this is how, the most corrupt countries in Africa, places like Nigeria, this is what has been happening. It didn't just start all of a sudden that when you're at an airport, they will ask you
for... It becomes a culture.
Yeah, it becomes a culture, exactly. It becomes a culture within the society, because you can do away with it. You can just... do whatever, earn some money, and
but I think it's
nothing happens to you.
It's also that political rights or political networks protect people, and like China yesterday sentenced one of their top war veterans, and they stripped him of all his political rights. They took all his money, all his accounts, everything. And I think once we start keeping that same energy with things we say, stripping people of these political immunities and friends that cover each other's backs, because when we're talking about these networks, these people look out for each other, in business, there are no permanent friends, there's permanent interest, and the interest of these people is looting and profiting and racketeering and laundering money. Those are their MOs, so they will protect each other so they can get the money or whatever what they need.
What I want to come to, what we are saying about these officials not being brought to book. We've got a very similar pattern at PRASA, where we had a derailed report which was written by the public protector in 2015, Tulema Donzel, which states exactly what is happening at PRASA, and then focuses more particularly on what's happening in the Western Cape. And then that report comes with recommendations, says so-and-so needs to be prosecuted, needs to be investigated, what is happening with those people? Nothing is happening with those people. We've had, I think this was about 3-4 weeks ago, I could be wrong, 3-4 weeks ago, the first person to appear in the Eastern Cape on the charges of stealing rail. Same person who was the head of rail, National Rail, Mtula Swartz, was arrested and bailed out with 20,000. So it's, for me as someone who's suffering, that's not enough. And then secondly, we know for a fact that Lucky Montana, who was a CEO of PRASA, did a lot of damage than anything else. We know that we've got Roy Moodley's name all over PRASA's books. We've got President Jacob Zuma there, but why are we not doing anything? The fact that they know that they can get away with it, because now they're sitting there, there's no seizing assets, there's no one who's being held accountable. There's even the companies that built those trains, it's not happening.
That this breeds a culture, and also the environment for citizens, for voter apathy.
True.
Yeah, I think these 100%. Situations and also different people, but the same story over and over and over again. So you kind of become, so it just breeds a ground for being actually, you know what, I'd rather not vote.
My dream is a society where everyone can live according to their needs and receive or can live to their abilities and to their needs.
My dream, I want to be a business of mine to help those who can't help themselves. They're in rural areas, there are people who are not educated but who have their soft skills that I can employ them in my business and help them.
My dream is for a more just economic system in South Africa where people's past and doesn't determine their future economically and socially.
My dream is a citizenry that is well informed and able to act on the information they have.
My dream is to see a society which has no inequality, people have access to basic needs, and basically to leave a legacy for generations to come.
Yazi, you should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong. You should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong.